Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, don't set your expectations too high. That way you won't be disappointed. That's what Brother Wayne does. He keeps his expectations low. That way he's not disappointed. So, well, do want to thank the Lord that we are back in Sunday school class. I know for some of y'all, your favorite 4 weeks of Sunday school class of the year is over, and you only have to wait 48 more weeks till we get back to the March for Missions again. But I appreciate y'all coming in this morning. If you have your Bible, turn to the book of James. Turn to the book of James this morning. And I've got something on my heart. I've actually had it on my heart for a while, and it's funny how which obviously I'm not a preacher, so I just teach Sunday school. But you get something on your heart, and normally if I get something on my heart, I just got to wait till I only got to wait 7 days. But we had the March for Missions, and because we had the March for Missions, it just had to sit there and percolate. And so anyway, that may be a good thing, maybe a bad thing. Sometimes if it sits on there too long, I overthink it. But I want to preface this Sunday school class with, to me, this is a very important Sunday school lesson. And if you'll take this Sunday school lesson to heart, I guarantee all your relationships that you have can and will be better if you take this Sunday school lesson to heart. I'm guaranteeing this so much that we have the Sunday school treasurer, Brother Wayne Gable. He was duly elected this morning. He won in a landslide. But the Sunday school treasurer will give you a double your money back guarantee. So whatever you paid for coming in Sunday school class this morning, Brother Wayne will give you double your money back if you are disappointed in the results, not of the Sunday school lesson, the teacher itself, but in the results of if you put this in practice in your life. So with that being said, James chapter number 1, and we're going to be looking in verse number 19. Verse number 19, again, this will, like I said, this has been percolating in my mind, and this will, if you apply this to your life, if you apply this, and for those of you who know me, I got one son sitting up here, my daughter sitting somewhere, my other son sitting somewhere, my wife and mother-in-law sitting somewhere. This, Brother Parks, this is a work in progress in my life, which a lot of times I feel like if you're a preacher, you preach where you're at. If you're a Sunday school teacher, you teach where you're at. That was one of the things I always loved about my father-in-law was just real. He was just real. He just, he was just real. And so he put the cookies on the bottom shelf. He didn't put them way up on the top shelf. And so in this lesson this morning, I thought about this, and I've been married for 28 and a half years now, and so going on 29, and I have enjoyed being married. I have enjoyed being married. I like being married. I like being a father. I like being a father, but Brother Parks, I thought about, had I made, and again, there's many verses, but I hope y'all understand what I'm saying. But Brother Cody, had I made this my life verse, on October the 25th, 1997, if I just follow these 3 things, I'd have had a better marriage. If I just followed these 3 things, I'd have had a better marriage. If I would have just followed these 3 things, I'd have been a better father. If I'd have followed these 3 things, I'd have been a better employee. In those moments when I was a boss, in those moments when I was the boss, if I'd have followed these 3 things, Brother Wayne, I'd have been better. Honestly, as a church member, if I'd have followed these 3 things, I'd be a better church member. And so that's what we're going to look at this morning. In James chapter number 1, verse number 19, he says, wherefore, and wherefore means, from the previous things that he's been talking about, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. Now, again, he says every man, and we understand that he's talking about all of mankind. But honestly, and again, we're about 95% men in here right now. But honestly, as a man, Brother Wayne, I've not always been swift to hear. There's a lot of times in my life where I think I know where you're going. And I don't like where I think I know you're going, and so I'm going to cut you off mid-sentence. I'm going to cut you off mid-sentence, and I've stopped listening, and I've started speaking. And so I thought about, again, like I said, and if you're married, you think you know what your wife's going to say. She thinks she knows what you're going to say. And again, like I said, I wish, and again, like I said, these are principles that I'm trying to apply today. And I still fail. I'll fail probably today in this. I may fail tomorrow. And so, but if I would just follow these three principles, there are a lot of times that I thought I knew what my wife was going to say, and I cut her off. And because I cut her off, it made her mad, and rightfully so. And because I didn't know where she was going. And so then it creates a friction. It creates a conflict. And we'll look at it. We'll look at it later. But then there's a pride factor that comes in, and now I have to show her who's boss. And I pretty much, I found out whenever we first got married, and before, preachers were always talking about, and you don't hear this word anymore. You talk about men being henpecked. And you just don't hear you don't hear it's a word you don't hear anymore. But they talk about men being henpecked. And honestly, when I got married, I kind of had this mindset like I have to show her that I'm in charge. Well, if you got to show someone in your charge, you're probably not that much in charge. If you don't have the self-confidence just to be in charge. If you have to I have to show them. Every once in a while, I just have to show them who's boss. Well, that's a problem. And so sometimes she would want to say something, and I didn't want to listen. And because I didn't want to listen, then she would get upset, and then because she was upset, that made me upset, and then I was more upset, And the next thing you know, we're in a full-blown argument. Why? Because I didn't want to listen. All she wanted to do was be heard, but I didn't want to listen. And so had I just made this my marriage verse, and I understand there's a lot more about marriage in the Bible, but that's not what we're looking at today. Had I just made this my marriage verse, and I said, if I would have just said, let me just hear what she has to say. Silver, not cut her off. Not cut her off, not say that. And again, as a Sunday school teacher, sometimes it's almost like we're Catholic and y'all are the priest and I'm confessing my sins to y'all. But y'all, there were times, Riley, where I'm just like, no, you just need to be quiet. Just hush. And all she wanted to do was just say something, but I didn't want to hear it. And so I just cut her off and be like, no. And Brother Wayne, all she wanted to do is just get it out. And again, I'll give y'all some marriage advice. If you're a woman in here, men are not mind readers. Men are not mind readers. We don't actually know what you're thinking. Even though, like what I'm talking about right here, saying I'm thinking you do. But Joseph's back there. He's grinning. He understands. Your wife, sometimes she expects you to be a mind reader, and then she gets a little upset because you don't know. The best thing a woman can do in marriage is just say exactly what it is you want. Just put it right out there on the table and say, this is exactly what I want. It'd make your life so much better. But here you have, he says, swift to hear. I found myself, Brother Wayne, I'm swift to shut off my hearing, but not swift to hear. I'm swift to shut off my hearing, because as soon as they say, y'all understand what I'm saying? As soon as they hit a trigger, boom, they hit a trigger, and now I'm spun up. Now I'm about to go off. And so they've hit my trigger, and so nothing else after they hit the trigger is heard. But had I been right as a husband, had my love been right for my wife, had my love been right for my children, had my love been right, had my attitude been right at work, if I'd have just been swift to hear. Because we all deserve criticism. If you're the boss and you own the company, yes, you do own the company. You sign the paychecks. But there are some times that you need someone to say, hey, I don't think we're doing this right here. And if you're the employee and you're working, guess what? You have a boss, and your boss is paying you. Your boss is it's his name that he has out there, that they're coming back on him whenever there's a problem. They're not coming on you. And so if he says, hey, I don't like it, guess what? You're going to redo it. Hey, I don't like how we're doing this. I don't like how this looks. We're going to take this all down. We're going to redo it. You may not like it, but that's what you have to do. And so there were times where my boss would criticize me and I didn't want to hear it. And there are times where my wife would want to say something, I didn't want to hear it. There are times when my kids would want to say something. And honestly, sometimes my trigger was just you. Because as soon as they say you, I just pointed my finger at y'all. It feels like an accusation. And Brother Parks, that's all they had to say was you. I don't know what they're going to say. They might say, Joseph, you're a great dad. But they got the you first, and I'm already off. And I'm already upset. And so James is talking to these people here, and he says, hey, we need to learn to be swift to hear. Again, like I said, if you're married in here and you say, I have marital problems, I can almost guarantee I can fix a lot of your marital problems just by saying, hey, just let them talk. And back to what I was saying about wives helping their husbands. There are times where your wife just wants you to listen. And there are times where your wife wants you to solve the problem. The problem is, in your male mind, you never can figure out which time she just wants you to listen and which time you just want to solve the problem. So when you try and solve the problem, she just wanted you to listen, and when you try and just listen, she wanted you to solve the problem. So ladies, if you could help your husband out by just saying, hey, I need you to just listen, and then we would just listen. Or I need you to help me solve this problem, and then we'll help you solve the problem. But they don't do that, and so we guess wrong, and we always guess wrong, and so that's a problem. But anyway, you understand what I'm saying. So he says, be swift to hear. I guarantee every man in here that's married, if I said raise your hands, if this would have kept you out of a lot of hot water in your marriage, if you'd have just been swift to hear. If you'd have just listened. And so if you look in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter number 5 here, he says in Ecclesiastes chapter number 5, and we'll actually come back to this in the next thing, but we're only going to read verse number 1 here. He said, keep thy foot when thou goest to the house of God, and be more ready to hear than to give the sacrifice of fools, for they consider not that they do evil. He said, when you come to the house of God, are you ready to hear? And again, I told y'all, I can check out in a moment. I can check, and I caught myself, Brother Parks, I caught myself checking out, And again, you don't have to do it anymore because of modern technology. But I used to listen to the weather report on WSB. I used to I would try to listen to Kirk Mellish weather report, and it come around every 6 minutes on WSB on the radio. And I'd get in the van in the morning, Chris, and I'd turn WSB on, and I'd just listen to I just want to hear I'd hear the traffic report and the weather report come around every 6 minutes. And as soon as Kirk Mellish's voice came on, I would check out. I'd think about something else. I'd be somewhere else, do something else. And then I would hear him close out and be like, I have no idea. Now, my ears heard the weather report, but I have no idea what the weather report is. And I realized that I was checking out. And I found that I can check out about anywhere. I can check out while my wife's talking to me. I can check out while my kids are talking to me. I can check out while my boss is talking to me. I can check out while I'm in church. Now, y'all understand, I sit upstairs, and sometimes I got a lot going on up there. I got cameras going, I got live stream going, I got sound going. Sometimes I got a lot going on. Sometimes I got too much going on. And so I don't always hear. And so I have to really concentrate. Really concentrate, and usually once the preaching starts, I'm pretty good because, all I have to do is maybe just move the camera back and forth a little bit. But I really have to concentrate but I found that I'll check out during preaching. And sometimes it's just because I get a thought. And I'll get a thought. The preacher will say something, and I'll hear something, and I'll be like, oh, and I'll pull my phone out, and I'll make a note in my note. Just make a note of it so I can come back to it. But I'll check out. And so hearing is there again. You might hear with your ears, but you're not hearing. And to hear, it's a conscience thing. I'm going to listen. There was a preacher that my kids know, and Brother Randy preached for many times. But if you were in a service on him, he would say, "Listen, listen," and why? It's because the preacher was saying something, and it's just natural. If you're listening, you'll incline your ear to what he's saying. You'll turn let me listen. Let me pull up a little closer and try and hear what he's trying to say. And he wasn't just saying, just listen with your ear, but listen with your mind and listen with your heart. Hear what that man of God has to say. And so many times we don't. In Proverbs chapter number 1, and I love the Proverbs. For those of y'all who know me know that I love the Proverbs. I love reading the Proverbs and thinking on the Proverbs, and the Proverbs are absolutely full. Actually, most of my verses that I have wrote down to look at are from the Proverbs, but we're going to look at this one right here. In verse number 1, verse number 8, it says, "My son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother." So here, just starting out the proverb, just starting it out, he said, if you'll hear the instruction, not just the words, but hear the instruction. Not just the words, don't just check out, oh, it's just dad being dad. Oh, it's just dad saying, just dad saying another thing. It's just my boss. He's always getting on to me. It's just mom, and she's just, she's always mad at me, so she's always. No. He said, here. Make the conscious effort to hear. And again, like I said, I think about back in school, Brother Wayne. What did they have whenever you were in school? What was you don't even remember. But anyway, you understand. Back in school, if I just would have listened, all I was thinking about was, man, it's almost recess time. It's about PE class. What's your favorite? About every boy in school. What's your favorite class? PE. What's your favorite class? PE. I just want to go out there and throw a dodgeball and see if I can knock somebody's head off with a dodgeball. That's what I want. That's what I wanted to do. and so, but if I'd have just paid attention, Brother Parks, if I'd have just listened, but all I'm thinking about was like, we're going to play dodgeball, and then after we played dodgeball, how I could have played dodgeball better. And so, like the class before PE and after PE, it was totally out because I wasn't paying attention, because I was still either thinking about or rehashing what just happened in PE class. I just didn't listen. In Proverbs chapter 2, I'll just read some verses real quick. Verse 1, my son, if thou wilt receive my words. It's the same thing. Here, receive. Receive them. There's a transaction taking place between words coming out of my mouth and your ears, and you are receiving them. Chapter 3, verse number 1. My son, forget not my law, but let thine heart keep my commandments. Guess what? If you didn't hear the law, you don't know what the law is. And your heart can't keep what it didn't receive, and the way those are received is through your ears. Chapter 4, verse 1. Hear, ye children, the instruction of a father, and attend to no understanding. Like I said, there is a conscious effort in chapter 5, verse number 1. He said, my son, attend unto my wisdom and bow thine ear to my understanding. So like I said, in the very first one, it's swift to hear. And again, I hope I've made my point, that it is a conscious effort to listen. You say, it doesn't take anything to listen. I'm just sitting right here, and I hear your words. Yes, you hear the words coming out of my mouth, but are you listening to them? Are you allowing them to percolate in your mind and enter into your heart? Or are they just going in one ear and out the other? The next one. Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak. Now again, I told y'all my story. I told y'all my story. I grew up around truck drivers, and I got a reputation. Growing up around truck drivers because all truck drivers are mouthy, all to the exclusion of none. But all truck drivers, they just sit around on a CB radio and just talk to talk. And I get it, because for years they just drive around by themselves, and they didn't have cell phones back then, so all they did was talk to truckers, and they just talked like truckers. And so, but I mean, my dad took me with him to the shop, took me everywhere, and so I just hung out with him. Well, then I just started talking like him. Well, then they're like he's a little smart aleck, and well, yeah, but that's what y'all made me. I listen to you, and then I talk like you talk to him. I just talk to you like you talk to him, and now you're mad because I'm too little and I shouldn't talk like that. And so I was often swift to speak. Like if you said something cutting to me, I'm going to say something cutting back. And in verse number 26 of James, he says, if any man among you seem to be religious, and bridleth not his tongue, but deceiveth his own heart, that man's religion is vain. Now, Brother Parks, again, I can look back at a lot of times, Chris, where I did not bridle my tongue. I can look back at a lot of times where I should have put a rein on my tongue, Brother Dakota, and said, I'm going to say what I about said right there. Not today, Satan. But anyway, there's a lot of times, and again, back to marriage. Like I said, because I wasn't swift to hear, I was swift to argue. Any of you guys in here swift to argue? Swift to take offense? Swift to be offended? Swift to just, and so like. And so if you're gonna argue, you might as well argue to win. And so I was swift to argue, Brother Parks, because I wasn't swift to hear. And again, like I said, a lot of times I took offense, and maybe there wasn't any offense meant. She was just trying to get it out. And she didn't know how to get it out right. And so she kept using you, and she wasn't trying to be accusatory, but I took it as accusatory. And because of that, I had to defend myself. And again, like I said, I mean, I'm still a work in progress in this, but I found, Brother Wayne, that, you know, maybe it's just better not to defend myself. Maybe it's better just to let her talk and bridle my tongue. Rein it in. Rein it in, be like, not today. And so he says, swift to hear, slow to speak. Proverbs says, a soft answer turneth away wrath. Just a soft answer. Again, sometimes it's pride. At the end of the day, most of the time it's just pride. I'll show them. I'll show her. They can't talk to me like that. They can't say that to me. The problem is we have an overinflated ego. We have an overinflated opinion of ourselves. And so in Proverbs chapter number 10, let me just read a few verses right here. Proverbs 10, verse number 19, he says, in the multitude of words there wanteth not sin, but he that refraineth his lips is wise. My father-in-law, again, used to sing a song, and I know it wasn't, it was a worldly song, but he used to sing a song all the time about you talk too much. You talk too much, and those of y'all who remember him had probably heard him at some point in time sing that song, you talk too much. And that's the truth. In chapter 15, verse number 1, I'm going to read it because it's referenced. A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. The tongue of the wise useth knowledge aright, but the mouth of fools poureth out foolishness. You can tell a lot about someone just by listening to their words. And a wise man doesn't have to say a lot of words, Brother Wayne. He doesn't have to talk a whole lot. But a foolish man doesn't know how not to talk. He doesn't know when to be quiet. He doesn't know when just to be like, if you just sit over and be quiet, no one will know how ignorant you are. He doesn't understand that. So he just talks, and everyone's like, listen to this guy. Listen to this guy. This guy doesn't know anything. But he sure thinks he does. In chapter number 18, verse number 13. He that answereth a matter before he heareth it, it is folly and shame unto him. Again, a lot of times these verses, they kind of intermingle and they kind of apply in both there. But again, how many times in 28 and a half years, if I would have just, and again, guys, I promise you, these words are going to be used against me in the court of my own house very soon. So I understand this. I absolutely understand this. And so, but you understand that how many times if I would have just listened, I wouldn't have had to come back and say, I'm sorry. And my wife be like, I can only count that about 5 times in her whole married life when he said, I'm sorry. So it would have been maybe just 1 or 2. But y'all understand that I mean, how many times have I had to go out and say, you know what, I'm sorry. Because I just wouldn't listen. And I had to speak first. And I had to speak longer. And I had to speak louder. And I had to just show her, or show them, or show him, or show whoever. In chapter number 21, chapter number 21, verse number 23. He said, whoso keepeth his mouth and his tongue keepeth his soul from troubles. His soul from troubles. We know the Bible says we're going to give an account for every idle word. Every idle word. If we really feared the judgment day, Brother Parks, there would be a lot of words that we just said, probably just don't need to say that. There are a lot of times, y'all, again, like I said, y'all, a lot of y'all have known me. Some of y'all have known me longer than others. Most of y'all have known me at least for 10 years or more. But you understand, sometimes, Brother Wayne, and sometimes I say things because it's funny in my mind. It's funny in my mind, but when I say it, man, it's not as funny whenever I say it as it was when I was thinking it. And sometimes I'm like, man, I probably shouldn't have said that. Probably wasn't the right time, probably wasn't the right setting, probably just wasn't right, period. Probably shouldn't have said it. And so I'll say things like, man, if I really thought about it, Brother Wayne, like I said, sometimes, the problem with us, as most men, is our mouth engages before our brain. Our brain's about 2 clicks behind, and so mouth's already moving before the brain says stop or don't, or this is a bad idea. But it's already moving, and then as a man, you're like, well, it's already in process now, so might as well just let it go, and I'll get forgiveness, because my brain didn't give me permission, so I'm just going to have to get forgiveness. But, you know what I'm saying? So, like I said, we do that, and it's like, man, if I'd have just held my tongue, if I just held my peace right there. In Ecclesiastes chapter number 5, I told y'all we were going to come back to that. Verse number 2 says, be not rash with thy mouth, and let not thine heart be hasty to utter anything before God. For God is in heaven and thou upon earth, therefore let thy words be few. For a dream cometh through the multitude of business, and a fool's voice is known by multitude of words. The longer you speak, the more you're telling us who you are. The more you speak, the more like, I don't know about that guy right there. I just don't know about that guy right there. Did you listen to what he just said? That's the craziest bunch of nonsense I've ever heard in my life. That's ridiculous. So last one. Verse number 19 again. Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. And guys, again, y'all know me, and I know most of y'all. And so sometimes it's just like, it's a hard pill to swallow. Sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow. But it's the Bible. Slow to wrath. Slow to wrath. And sometimes I'm like, if you ever bought firecrackers or smoke bombs or anything, they got that wick, and it's about that long, and sometimes you just cut the wick off and they just go off that much faster. Sometimes I'm just that way, where the wick's just cut off, and it does. I don't even need a lighter. I just need a spark. I just need something to spark. And so, again, I wasn't always that way. I hadn't always been that way. But I just let stuff get to me. I let stuff get under my skin. I let it just boil up inside. And maybe my wife doesn't realize that day is the day that I've cut my wick short. Maybe my kids don't realize that this is the day that Dad's wick's pretty short. Maybe Dakota, you and Mariah, had a knockdown drag out, and you come into work, and that's the day that Bub and Silver decide that they're gonna argue all day. Or what I'm saying, or maybe that's the day where Dakota's like, we're gonna, and that's the day that Silver's had a bad day at the house, or Bub's had a bad day at the house because his dad chewed him out for parking his big truck in the way and parking too close to the Yukon or something like that. You understand what I'm saying? Like we don't always know what someone's going through. And we don't know how close they are. We just don't know. And we set them off. And again, like I said, I'm, like I said, I feel like I'm confessing my sins here, but a lot of times with my kids, it wasn't them. It wasn't their fault. Sometimes they're just asking a question, Brother Parks. But I didn't want to hear the question at that time. Sometimes they're just, my wife's making a suggestion. All wives love to make suggestions while you're working on the car. They all like to come out while you're working on the car and be like, why don't you do it this way? And your automatic response is, well, if you want to do it, climb up here and do it. And I'll get down there and, drink a glass of sweet tea while you can climb up here and reach across there and do it. And so, like I said, it's so easy to justify me like, I was having a bad day. I was having a bad day today, so you know what I mean? Better not cross me today, because today's the day. Boys, like, I'm just telling you right now, today's the day that if you say anything wrong today, it's going to be on. And we almost, in our mind, we almost build ourselves up like, yeah, you know what, I'm justified. You know what, every man needs to blow off a little steam every once in a while. Every man just needs to just vent, in a violent way. And I understand that. But I don't think it's biblical. I understand that. But I don't think it's right. I identify with that. But I wasn't right when I did it. And Brother Wayne, like I said, back to my marriage. Had I said these three things are the things I'm going to focus on. Again, love your wife, husbands. Yes, I understand all that. But had I said I'm going to be swift to hear, I'm just going to hear what she has to say. I'm going to be slow to speak. Only the times when she says, I want you to hear. And the time she says, I need you to help me, then I'll be like, well, let's think about this. And then I'm going to be slow to wrath. I'm not going to be so easily offended. I'm not, just because she starts the sentence out with you, didn't, you don't, you haven't. You know what? Maybe I'm going to go ahead and let her get past those two words before she's already realizes that I'm on the warpath and she, she is about to be in a lot of trouble, a lot of hurt. Not physically, you understand, not physically, but emotionally. Because most of our wives, honestly, have, if we were just honest, we'd probably say most of our wives have experienced some form of emotional abuse from us because they crossed us. And emotionally, we vented our frustration, maybe because we had a bad day at work. Maybe because we just had a bad day at work. And, I don't know why anyone would ever kick a dog because they're mad at the cat. I just don't. We don't even want to get started about that. You shoot the cat if you're mad at the cat. But anyway, you understand what I'm saying. But like, sometimes you're just mad. You're just mad. You're just aggravated. Like I had a bad day. We're supposed to get 100 foot of this done today, and we only got 25 of it done today. And how in the world am I going to make any money in this business if all we ever do is 25 foot? We're supposed to get 100 done. I'm losing money on this job. I'm going to lose money on this job. I keep losing money on this job. For long, I'm going to be standing out there with the rest of the people. I'm going to be like, hey, you stand on this side of the interstate. I'm going to stand on this side of the interstate with my will work for food side. Because I tried to work for food, but I lost all my money because I can't get anyone to work. And just walk in and you're just aggravated. And you're like, well, let me see, who can I take this out on today? And it's just who steps through the door first? Who comes out and says, hey, Dad, what's going on? You're like, because we're not slow to wrath. You got that little break from the time you left work to the time you get home to be like, God, you're really going to have to help me today. Today, of all days, please let my wife be sweet today. Please, when I walk in the door, please don't let my kids be fighting today. Please don't let them bring any problems. Please let today have been the day that there were no problems at the house. Please don't let today be the day and just let everything go smooth. And we know a lot of times that's not how it works. You come in and the kids are fighting, and your wife's like, you deal with them now. And you're like, I'm about to deal with them. I am about to deal with them. And we deal with them in our frustration, Matthew. We don't deal with them because we love them. We deal with them because we're angry. Because we're angry at the cows. We're angry at the farm equipment. We're angry at the customer. We're angry at our employees. We're angry at whatever we're angry at. And that's how we deal with our kids. And they don't understand. I don't understand. I just wanted to come up and give Dad a hug. And I didn't get a hug. I got a you don't do this and you don't, and it just runs down the line. So like I said, my time's almost up this morning. If you take this to heart, I don't care how old you are in here. If you're in your 80s, it'll help you. If you're in your 70s, it'll help you. If you're in your 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s, teens, I don't care how old you are in here. I don't care who it is you're dealing with. If you don't have a wife, it'll still help you. If you don't have kids, it'll still help you. If you don't have a boss, and you're a man, you need a boss, get a boss, and it'll help you. If you are the boss, it'll help you. Swift to hear. Again, like I said, a lot of times people, if we were taught things that actually helped in life in grade school, that you know, like, hey, this is how to help you function in life. Let me make you understand compound interest. Let me make you understand how to deal with people. Let me make you understand. And just the words, don't start out a sentence with you. Because if you start out a sentence with you, it's now an accusation. Start out a sentence with I really need this. I could really use this. But if you say, you're not giving this to me, it's an accusation. Now they have to defend themselves. But if you just start out with I, just simply I, this is what I would really like. And maybe he says yes, maybe he says no, but he's not on the defense because you started out the sentence with you. And again, learn to just be swift to hear. Learn just to keep your ears open and allow them to complete their whole, again, my kids have spoken much fewer words than they would have in their life because I cut them off mid-sentence. I've cut them off. And then I berated them because I thought I knew what they were going to say. And maybe I was right. Maybe what they were going to say was wrong. Maybe. I don't know. They didn't get to say it, and I didn't hear it. And so if you just take this, again, like I said, if you're married in here, I'm promising you, you come back to me in a month and say, you ain't going to believe how it is at my house. My wife, I almost had to call 911 the other day because she passed out because I actually listened to a whole sentence she had to say before I cut her off. She couldn't believe it. She wanted to check to see if it was actually me. She did a DNA test to make sure it was actually me because she's like, that ain't the person I married. Or that ain't the person I've been married to for the last 10 years. The worst thing our wives say about us, and again, is you're not the person I married. It could be the best thing. But a lot of times it's not said that way. Again, started out with you. You're not the person I married. And it's a shame if our wives say, you're not the person I married. And again, like I said, if you had a lot of problems and you fixed those problems and you got right with God, you understand what I'm saying. That's not what I'm talking about. But if you were kind and gentle and loving and would listen and you were her protector and all those things, and now all you are is just the guy that pays the bills, and you don't want to hear her problems because you got problems of your own. That's what I'm talking about. you're not right. You're not right. I'm just going to say it. You're not right with her, and you're not right with God. He said, be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. Thank you.